Good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Marks. I am the director for the Cross-Cultural Center and Center for Global Citizenship. Let me show you my picture first and foremost. And I work at St. Louis University, like I stated before. And on behalf of 100 Black men of Metropolitan St. Louis, and also for the, can everybody hear me? If you can turn your mics down, that would be greatly appreciated.
That place now, but I don't want small money out.
So go throw it away.
Now can you hear me? Gotcha. On behalf of the 100 Black men of the Metropolitan of St. Louis and the St. Louis Regional Consortium of Higher Education Initiatives Supporting Black Male Success, we welcome you to How Do I Get from High School to College? This is a real conversation for parents and students of color. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our moderator today. His name is Danny Shields. He is a college counselor. He works 5 years doing admission counseling, and he is from and works at St. Louis University High. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to him so he can moderate this wonderful conversation, and we'll get started.
Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here to help serve the community and get some information out to everyone about that college access piece, which is extremely important. Without further ado, I just want to introduce our panel of guests. And I'd like to start, I guess we can go in alphabetical order by last name. Mr. Burroughs, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, thank you. So good evening, everybody. My name is Kriston Burroughs. I currently serve as a Senior Assistant Director of Admissions at Washington University in St. Louis. I am originally from the great city of St. Louis, so this is my hometown. So it's a pleasure to be chatting with you all today about the college search and admissions process.
All right, thank you for that. Now, Mr. Tejada.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. I'm Danny Tejada. I'm the lead college counselor for We Go to College, and I'm also director of college counseling at Villa Duchesne and Oak Hill School here in St. Louis. I'm originally from New York City, moved here to St. Louis a year ago, and I've been doing college counseling for about 8 years now. Spent most of my career working in community-based organizations, working with mostly Black and brown families from low-income backgrounds.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Now, Mr. Wilson, you have the floor. I think you're still on mute right now.
It won't.
There we go.
All right, there you go. Ryan Wilson from St. Louis, Missouri. Went to Hazelwood East High School. Went to Lincoln University, HBCU within Missouri, but now I work at St. Louis University as well as within the education department. But I worked in admissions, financial aid, housing, all those good things. So I have a lot of information about going through higher ed. Happy Black History Month.
Before we get started, Daniel, can everybody put in the chat if you're a parent, if you're a student, or you're an administrator? That way we kind of could see who we're working with tonight.
All right. Awesome. We have a lot of students in here. That's phenomenal. They're really seeking that information and that support. So thank you for joining us again. And I would like to pose this question to the panel. How does one start thinking about that college process? I know generally when we're in high school, you know, that the end goal is to graduate and then seek that higher education in whichever form that may be. But around what year do you suggest that students start thinking about college and really get on that path in looking at their schedules and looking at their activities and even thinking about their interests and starting to prepare just about that college conversation and that preparation? and anyone can jump in at any time.
Hey, yeah. I think for me it starts in ninth grade, and I know we might have some older students here, and that's fine. But the reason why I say it starts in ninth grade is because it starts with your grades. That's number one. You know, your grades really set the stage for how the rest of your high school career is going to go. It sets the stage for what classes you take junior year, senior year in terms of APs, honors, and stuff like that. It sets the stage for preparing for this new world that we're in terms of test optional admissions. But for generally the rest of you who are might be in 10th, if you struggled a lot in ninth grade, this is your chance to still turn it around. Especially in also in 11th grade. 12th grade, it gets tough to turn things around, right? Because admissions officers are looking at the first 3 years. So if you are in the 10th grade, this is your chance to turn it around in terms of your grades. 11th grade, same thing, right? One of the most important things I want to bring up in terms of preparation for college is learn how to ask for help. We are in a community where individualism is praised, and I totally get that. Figuring out for yourself is very important. I also taught my sister that as well, but I also told her too, when the going gets tough, I'm here for you. You don't have to ever feel like you don't have to, that you can't ask me for help. I think it's very important and vital that you as a student learn how to ask your teacher for help. See them after school, see them during your free time to get the help that you need to be a successful student, because the skill of asking for help, the skill of advocating for yourself is going to help you in college. When you need to talk to your professors, it's going to help you in your career. I always tell students now that even as a professional, I'm still asking for help from my colleagues and engaging people, how to be a better counselor every single day. We're in a community. The whole phrase "it takes a village" is very, very key. But in terms of the more mechanical things of the application process, of course you should be thinking about what kind of schools you want to apply to in ninth grade, so you can know what expectations you need in terms of GPA and stuff like that. But of course, I think it's very key that you really start pulling things together in terms of the actual application in your junior year. That's something that I was taught very early on in my career. That was something I was taught also in high school, because I was in a community-based organization, Upper Bound program in New York City. And it was always drilled into us to understand the process as early as junior year. To know, what kind of school I want to be at, to meet college reps, right? You should always feel free to go to college reps when they visit your school, especially in this world now where it's all virtual, right? So even if you are a ninth grader, pop in to a rep visit, talk to your college counselor. You don't have to wait to senior year to talk to your college counselor, to get an idea. And also as well, I think it's key to really start writing your main college essay in your junior year, more particularly the spring semester, so you can really hone your message, right? Because for a lot of you, it's the first time you're actually talking about yourself. You may have gotten assignments where you are, doing a lot of technical work, research, and stuff like that. Very rarely you're doing personal narrative in your school, right? And the college essay is the first time you're doing a personal narrative. So, you want to make sure that you are in a place where your voice is heard, and that's where you go to your counselors in your community. And even, I'm sure Mr. Burroughs can also attest to this as well. Sometimes college reps are wanting to even look at your essay, right, and give you pointers and tips and stuff like that. And it's key to really knock that stuff out of the way. The main essay, coming up with a core list by the end of your summer, so by the time you're a senior, you're not so stressed out, you're not so worried. as you try to be a successful student in your senior year, on top of applying to college, because applying to college is also another job within itself. So definitely use your counselor as key. I think one of the things that was pretty astonishing to me about St. Louis was back in New York, we were meeting with students very often, like sometimes every couple of days, every week. Here in St. Louis, I do it every 2 weeks, and I notice it's not necessarily a normal thing, but I really want to say that your counselors are there, use them, bug them, go to their office, make appointments, get into the mix, and if you're virtual, it's more critical than ever to really get into that place, get into their ear, so, and then also too, start thinking about, especially if you're a very high achieving student at this point, start thinking about applying early decision. Like start thinking about schools that you're really crazy about, schools that you really love. Like if WashU is a school that you love and you got that GPA to make it, right? Think about applying early decision, right? So, because the other thing you got to think about too, very early on in the process that people don't really think about until the spring semester when they get the decisions back and get their financial aid packages back, is financial aid, is the debt load, right? So you got to think about that beforehand. Like if you know you're low income and you're a high achieving student, you should be looking at full need schools, for example. So that's just some things here. Sorry, I know I tend to go off on a tangent of this stuff. I love this stuff so much,
I want to tag in a little bit. For the parents, I want you to understand that 8th grade is a great grade to at least take your students to a different college in your community, in your town. If you're visiting families somewhere in Texas, I don't know where you might go, visit a college. Make that vacation, that summer vacation, around a college visit in 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade, because once your child and you feel comfortable on a college setting, they'll feel comfortable going. I've been taking my son on college settings since he was a little boy, just because. So we will go to Florida and we'll be close to a college. We'll just go to the campus just to get that feel. So parents, if nothing else, please, please, please start sending your students to a college in a college setting. Lastly, summer programs on the colleges are the best thing to do, especially for that 7th to 8th grade year. It prepares that mind and that idea of I can walk on this college campus and actually achieve what I want to because I've done this before and this is nothing to me. So just remember that.
My colleague said literally everything I could possibly say. I would say in this new virtual world, my colleague Danny kind of touched on it. A lot of universities are starting to reach out and target programming at younger students. For example, the university that I work at, WashU, we are rolling out a series of younger student programs this spring. And so if you're in the 9th grade, all the way through that 11th grade year, no matter where you may be on that process, we're just sharing some general information on how to start your search, how to pay for college, and if you're interested in those highly selective institutions, what does the recruitment process look like for that? And so don't wait until that junior year. If you are a junior or a senior, you're kind of on deck. So it's okay. Feel free to reach out to us. I know one of the things that we all love about this work is that we get to travel and meet you in person, but a pandemic has kind of altered the way that we do our work. And so reach out to us directly. If you're in the 8th grade and you're like, hey, I go to this I'm in this city, who might my admissions officer be? We all have geographic territories. Get to know us earlier. The earlier you get to know us, the more familiar you get to know, the more comfortable you get with us, the better it'll be. So I would say, take advantage of signing up for those mailing lists early, getting to know us early, just kind of speaking from that college perspective. Everything was said, so.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So On to my next question. And a lot of the panelists discussed this a bit within their responses to the original question. But one of the words that we hear a lot within the admissions world is fit. So finding the right fit when you're researching different schools. And so I would like to pose the question to the panel. How would you recommend that students go about really finding the right fit, especially when their inboxes and mailboxes are being filled with a lot of literature from a variety of schools? How would you recommend and advise young students to really use that discernment to kind of filter the schools away and find that perfect one?
Mr. Burroughs, you can start.
Yeah, I can take this one. So, shameless plug, we have a program that we're doing this spring that kind of talks about this. But one of the things that I recommend doing is having a conversation with your family or your support network. Talking with them about like, all right, mom, dad, grandma, auntie, uncle, whoever it is in your life that's your guardian or your support. Have a real conversation with them about how far do you want me away from home? How comfortable am I being away from home? What are some of the things I want academically out of the university that I'm going to? What am I interested in major-wise? If you don't know, you quick Google searches on like top universities for pre-med or top universities for business, just to kind of get you a big kind of wide swath of your search parameters. And then the more you kind of start to look at those universities, start to kind of read in on like if diversity and inclusion is important to you, kind of Google and look up like diversity and inclusion at X school, or reach out to the admissions office to ask them like, hey, how important is campus life? What are, is there a big sports culture, or is there a big research culture? So you'll kind of start to kind of figure out what it is you want, and you may not know necessarily right off the bat what you want. So just kind of start with that big kind of high level of like, how many people do I want to go to school with? Is it a really big school? Previous to working at Washu, I worked at the University of Texas in Austin, which is a massive school. And so you can kind of do comparisons in your home state of like, an equivalent school in terms of like flagship status or that big state school status here in Missouri would be the University of Missouri, Columbia. So take a trip on those local college campuses, as my colleague Ryan said, just to kind of get familiar with what a college campus will look like and feel like, and everyone is going to be a little bit different, right? And so start to kind of get a little bit more familiar with what it is you want out of your college education, and then just start kind of asking us or making kind of a running list of questions, and reach out to us in the admissions offices and say, hey, I know nothing about your school. Tell me what I need to know in order to be a successful applicant. And we literally get paid to do this, and answering questions is all I love to do. And the more that we can help you, even if, through that conversation, we find out that like, hey, you wanted a big state school with like high sports, big sports culture, and we're a smaller, private, tiny school that doesn't really have big sports. We have like intramural sports and we have club sports, but if you're looking for like a football game to go to on a Saturday and we don't offer that, it's okay to say, hey, it's not what I'm looking for. We'll still be able to help you navigate what that process looks like. Also lean into your college counselors. There are people on that are there in your high schools that you can go to and say, hey, I'm interested in this. And they're gonna have or be able to tap into their network of other counselors across the country to say like, hey, I'm looking for a school that serves students that are very into their faith, very big into sports, and also very affordable. And so we're all gonna put our collective brains together to help them navigate that process. But I'll kind of stop there and let my colleagues jump in with any other additional advice.
I'll jump in a little bit. I wanna go in and say, again, that visit always helps. I know when I visited my college, it felt like home to me. And if it feels like home, that is probably one of the best fits. You would actually help yourself to say, hey, mom, dad, this feels like home to me. And if it feels like home, that means you have your good surroundings around you. So that's number one. But also, back to admissions counselors, they're the cream of the crop right here. But those scholarships, you never know unless you got to ask those scholarships, because sometimes fit with let me just say good grades and a good ACT score, that fit could be the money. I mean, because you're there for 4 years, not for the rest of your life, but you're there for 4 years. And if that money is talking, you know, you might want to go that route. We know we all have our dream schools. Mine was University of Hawaii, but my parents weren't flying me out there and bringing me back, and let alone I couldn't have paid for it. But anyway, but the thing was, I found a university that was right fit for me, as well as my parents could afford it. And that's what really helped me out. So having that conversation and actually visiting and making that home feel, that is more special. Last but not least, there's nothing wrong with community colleges. They are a great step to get into any college here. And I know everybody will say that as well too. So if you don't really know that college, as long as you know your goals and aspirations and know that every school has a common core that you have to go through anyway, taking those common classes won't hurt you at all. So
I would just say really quickly, you know, really great points here. I think for me, I think a lot about when I was a high schooler as well. And the most important thing for me, being low-income student, zero EFC, you know, being on public assistance, was the money factor, right? Which school is going to give me the most affordable package, right? Like for me, my goal was, I'm trying to graduate with very little debt or even no debt. So, but again, too, you know, that also requires a lot of hustling, you know, in terms of applying to a lot of outside scholarships too. And I think the key question you need to think to yourself is, and it's fine to have certain goals and majors in mind, but it's also okay too if you're undecided. You know, I always tell students who come to me that, oh, I don't have an idea, you know, what I want to do, and sometimes they're scared to tell me that. I love students who are undecided the most. And the reason why is because you're willing to explore. You're willing to hear me out and maybe even listen to some of my crazy suggestions for schools, right? But the key question you got to ask yourself, even if you don't know what you want to do, is what life do you want? You know, what do you picture your life to be in the future? You know, what you do now in school dictates the opportunities you have down the line. And do you want a family? You want a house? You want a car? Stuff like that. What kind of life that you want? And that's something you could think about now, not necessarily what career you want to do, because I think that's a lot to ask kids your age sometimes.
Very true. Very true. Thank you all for sharing. And I love to crowdsource sometimes. And we have a comment from the comment section. And Dr. Ford said, I wanted to share this with everyone. If you're a Missouri student, take advantage of the A+ program if you want to go to the community college route. So there's so many different paths to getting your degree and getting into that career to become successful. So I wanted to share that as well. Thank you for sending that comment. And so in thinking about the perfect fit, sometimes students aren't necessarily sure what academic area they want to go into. And so us knowing that the #1 major for incoming freshmen is undecided, what advice would you give to a student who is coming in with multiple interests, or they're not quite sure what route they want to go, but they do want to pursue a higher education degree? What resources and what advice would you give to that student?
all right, I'm gonna start this one off. You guys help me out, okay? So first off, parents, you know your child better than we could ever know your child. So if you know your child wants to be a doctor but cannot pass biology, we need to find a plan B, okay? So that's just be known. But the thing is, find that thing that the student loves. Nobody really knows, but the student knows. So find that one thing they love. Is taking pictures, if it's communication, if it's helping people. There's a lot of jobs and also a career services within every university that will support that student and find that career pathway for them, as well as I know SLU and WashU do have these career pathways that can actually, they take a test, and the career counselor just kind of hones in those four or five jobs that the student can definitely do if and when they're undecided. We will get into pre-med and pre-everything later, but finding that major really does help out, in researching what job will be out there 4 years after I graduate. Not today, but 4 years after I graduate is the key thing. And the parent can definitely help out, but the parent cannot be the dream killers. Please let us do that job for you, because we want you to have a happy home.
One of my favorite things that I used to do with students a lot, and I wish I would do it now, to be honest, but it's a different environment that I'm in, was I used to have students do multiple intelligence quiz. And the reason why I will have them do that is to get them start thinking about, like Mr. Wilson says, some of their hobbies, because they don't tend to think that interest in hobbies is something they can make a life out of. So, I would have them do that test, and then we will talk about some of the careers that came out of the results out of that test. So I definitely suggest looking up multiple intelligence quiz and checking that out. And also, I think the other one there's another one called 15 Personalities or something like that. I forgot the exact name of it, but I love that one too. I remember taking that as an adult and thinking to myself, wow, this is exactly who I am as a person. I think answering those questions honestly really help students, start thinking about, where their future can go. And as Mr. Wilson mentioned earlier, it's definitely great to go to community college and have those base foundation courses. But also, too, if you're still undecided, liberal arts institutions are a great avenue. I love liberal arts institutions. I went to one, and I was one of those kids that wanted to be multiple things. I wanted to be a video game programmer. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to do all these different things. And I think for me, the great thing about liberal arts institutions is that you get the opportunity to try new things, meet different people that you will never meet in your life. And one thing I always like to tell students is, because when I was in high school, I used to stutter a lot. It used to be very difficult to understand me. So if you were to watch a video, and there's a video exists out there of me from a scholarship that I won back in high school, and you see me now, completely two different people. And I really think that a lot of that comes from me. One of the things I told you is that I want to be an actor, was me taking acting classes all 4 years that I was there. Because I realized that it was helping me articulate better. It was helping me be comfortable with telling my story. And those acting classes really helped me in even my job now every day.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that personal experience as well. And so I kind of wanted to discuss within the pandemic era that we're in right now, and with the world of college admissions kind of changing a bit, how would you advise a student to really navigate and research colleges during this time? Because we know that some policies are changing. A lot of schools were considering the test optional route, but 2020 expedited that process for majority of schools in the country. And it's almost like on a daily basis, we're receiving emails from colleges that are changing admissions policies and the process of getting into their school. And so how would you advise that a student really navigates that process in a world of changing admissions policies almost weekly? And
Yeah, this is a.
I was going to say, I want you to start off with that.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a great question. And this is also a question that we at colleges and universities are asking ourselves. I think the pandemic has really forced universities to take a critical look at the way that we do this work. And is it equitable? And does it make sense? In a pre-pandemic landscape, you as a family could hop on a plane, jump in a car, get on campus, and physically tour the campus. But because that's not possible in the ways that it used to be, a lot of us are turning to virtual programming, and that works in its current format for so long before we started realizing that like 45 minutes or less is kind of what you got to keep it to. targeting our programming, getting students in front of other students so that you can get a sense of what the real experience is. So I would say probably in this new landscape is really tapping in, like if you have a school you really want to go to, asking the admissions office, are there any ways that I could email or call a student or interview a student? Because students can say things to other students that I, as an admissions officer, can say, but it would sometimes get me into some tricky waters. And so, if you are someone that's like, I really want to know, like, the website looks pretty and they have all these nice, great words about diversity and inclusion, but what does it really mean to be a Black student at a highly selective institution? Or what does it really mean to be a woman in the engineering program at a big flagship state school, right? And so we all have networks of students that we will either pay or will volunteer for our offices, and we encourage them to share real, honest, authentic perspectives with students. And so I would say one of the ways that I've encouraged students to kind of really explore colleges is to reach out to colleges and say, can you connect me with a student who is from my area, who is maybe studying what I'm interested in studying? 9 times out of 10, we're going to have someone, although sometimes it gets a little tricky to find that kid that's from, Hawaii who wants to study pre-law and has like a major in like fashion design, right? Like it kind of gets a little tricky there, but sometimes we'll do our hardest to connect you with students. But yeah, I would say that's probably from where I sit. One of the things that I am doing more of recently is connecting current students with prospective students.
Awesome. And I love that that piece that you discussed about student transparency. I tell some of my students sometimes that when you receive all of this literature from colleges, sometimes they can all sound very similar. And the sky is blue and the grass is green, but when you talk to students, they'll be a little bit more transparent with you and let you know, okay, yeah, the school is great, but there's a patch of brown grass over there too. So I really like that you added that piece. To our other panelists, any other follow-ups with that?
I'll just simply say we're in a social media world, right? Like there's students out there who put YouTube videos talking about their experiences on different college campuses. You guys have TikTok. I don't know how it works necessarily, but I'm sure y'all know how it goes, right? You have Twitter. There's a lot of different opportunities for you to really get that real experience and explore a lot more. And also too, I would say ask the adults in your life, teachers, counselors, about their college experiences and where they went and how their process went as well.
No, I'm going to add just like what Danny said. Just ask your cohorts, ask the seniors that might be graduating soon, or people that in church that or you might come in contact with. Definitely ask them their experiences within their college experience. That's the main thing. That always helps out.
Most definitely. Thank you all for sharing. And so earlier we touched on financial safety schools. And so in composing your list and kind of narrowing it down to the final, 6 or 7 schools that you're going to apply to, it's extremely important to have that financial safety school on there. And so when navigating that process, when looking at scholarship opportunities, and just overall, if the school is historically known for giving decent merit aid and need-based aid, in addition to those factors, what would you recommend that students do in order to be proactive? And I know earlier, Mr. Tejada mentioned to look for those community-based scholarship opportunities as well, because that can definitely be supplemental to whatever a school is going to give you off the bat. But what are their options for students to really engage and be productive and proactive in helping their financial circumstances?
I want to start with one thing real quick. 2 things actually. Number one, I think, and Mr. Burroughs can kind of talk about this as a mission counselor, but when I was a mission counselor, I always tell students, hey, 10 schools at least apply to. There might be more or less, but at least 10. But number 2, you never know unless a student asks the counselors, high school counselors, what schools are the high school or school districts connected with. We might have different programs like a Grow Your Own program where they can get a full scholarship to be a teacher if they want to be a teacher, or they might have partnerships with different schools that you just didn't know about because you were just a student. So always start, to me, and Danny can get on this, talk about the partnerships the school has with other universities. So I just want to start with that, and we can go ahead and go for it.
I think one thing I always bring up very often to students very early on in the process is the net price calculator. Every school has a net price calculator. And the way to find that, you Google the name of the school, followed by net price calculator, and it's usually the first link. And using the school's net price calculator, you put your income info in, family size, and you'll get sort of an idea of what to look forward to financially for school. I always strongly advise that students look at that before they really put schools on their list, right? Because the last thing you want as a student is to have that heartbreak when your parent tells you they can't afford the school, or the parent, or even on the other side of it, the parent have to break it down to the child that they can't afford the school. And I know as a parent, you want to do everything you can for your child. But I think it's important to really understand what it means to have responsible debt, right? Because, things like the Parent Plus loan, if you haven't heard of it already, can really kill a lot of families. I know people who are even my age who their parent is still paying off the Parent Plus loan. We're talking about years down the line already. So I think it's thinking to yourself and sitting down as a family, as uncomfortable as may sound, because I know it's taboo to talk about family finances, and when it comes to college, you have to have that conversation. How much can you guys contribute to a school? And also, as well as a student, are you hustling every single weekend applying to scholarships too? But it's important to realize that to know how to read financial aid award letters, financial aid packages, right? So you can know what are missing gaps too. So I definitely, strongly advise figuring out, understanding, talking to a counselor. You could even free to reach out to me. One of the things people praise me for is really being really good with the financial aid stuff and helping students and families understand that. So, but it's important that you understand that, so that way you as a student aren't being crushed by debt as you get older, and your parent isn't either as well.
Great points. I would echo all of that. I will also say that one of the things working at a highly selective institution has shown me about the admissions landscape is we have a completely different way of talking about finances that make no sense to the average consumer. We've also turned college education into we've applied a business model to the college education experience. And so parents and students may start to get this mindset of like, it's not worth it to pay X amount of dollars for Y experience. And so to Mr. Tejada's point, you and your family got to kind of sit down and figure out, all right, what are we comfortable paying? Gone are, for the majority of families in today's America, gone is the experience where 4.0 in a perfect 1600 or 36 is all that you need to get a full ride scholarship to a university. Now, there may be some caveats to that, depending on what kind of school you're looking at and financial income thresholds. A lot of schools now are starting to do programs where if you are from a limited income background and you are able to be admitted to the institution, the school will pay for the entire cost of your attendance. WashU, for example, has a program for Missouri and Southern Illinois students called the Washu Pledge. And so if you are admitted to the university and you meet the financial kind of threshold that we've set, it'll be free. But you got to kind of look into those programs a little bit more, because there will be often fine print on what you as a student or a family need to do in order to meet those programs. And so take advantage of resources like Raise Me. Raise Me is an amazing free resource where you can literally earn scholarship dollars while you are in high school for doing things you're doing already. Like, we will give you money for every A that is on your transcript, for every hour of community service, for every school visit that you take, and even in a virtual world, if you do our virtual campus tour, we'll give you X amount of scholarship dollars up to a certain threshold. There are phenomenal programs that are a little bit more challenging to get into, such as QuestBridge, right? And so QuestBridge is a phenomenal network of schools excuse me, that partner with the QuestBridge network and essentially will alleviate that cost of attendance. One of the things I've also learned working at a highly selective is that sticker shock is a real thing. You can self-select yourself out of cost of attendance. I'm gonna be transparent. Washu is one of the most expensive schools I have ever seen. It costs about 80 grand a year to go here. Now, keep in mind, we are a school, just kind of using that current context, that we meet 100% of demonstrated financial need. So to the average consumer, you're like, I have no idea what that means. Basically, you fill out the FAFSA and you fill out another document. We're going to take those two things together, look at your family's financial circumstances, and we're going to meet you where your family is. And so we're going to kind of minus out that portion that your family can pay for, and we have the rest of the tab. But not every school has that. And so you can kind of select schools that you're gonna see that school that's like a state school, for example, that, on the surface, it's gonna look like, hey, they're giving me a scholarship for everything. But then you're left with about a $20,000 gap that you gotta cover versus that really expensive private school is gonna cover everything, right? And so these are the things I've learned, is that sometimes what looks as the cheapest on the surface can often down the road be the most expensive. As someone who is a state school graduate, went to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, I could buy a couple of houses with the amount of debt that I have and my mom has, talking about Parent Plus loans. And so taking advantage of learning as early as you can, what are the words that schools and colleges use, and what do they mean? And so if you need to jump on the phone with an admissions counselor or a financial aid counselor at a university and say, hey, help me break this down, help me understand this, and that's what we're here for. And so I would say lean into us. If you have any questions, use those net price calculators, use those cost calculators on our website. Because we are by federal law mandated to have those on our websites now. And so, go to those. And if you have questions after you put your numbers in and you're like, this doesn't make sense, reach out to us. We are happy to help.
That college financial literacy piece is extremely important. But before we go into the next question, I just want everyone to know that the buck doesn't stop here. So once you're in college, there are additional things that you can do your sophomore year, your junior year, your senior year, to help that tuition fees, room and board amount go down. Being extremely involved freshman year can lead to residence hall positions where your tuition is paid for. If you're doing research on campus, you can get stipend opportunities or that research grant. So look into those opportunities your freshman year as well, because that can play a role in what you'll receive down the line. So that can really cut those costs. And so, Mr. Marks, you had a question for the panel as well.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit deeper regarding students of color, specifically as it relates to Black students, specifically Black males, and their entering college. And I think we know that is probably one of the lowest demographics and populations that are actually entering the collegiate world and actually matriculating. What are some things that you can tell our guidance counselors, our high school counselors about the encouragement for the Black male to enter a collegiate space? Because I think part of it is that they're afraid, because and it's also that masculine thing, like, yeah, I don't need this, playing in those things of I don't need X, Y, and Z, whatever that may be. So what advice would you give to that Black male student? Because we know they're intelligent, but they're not playing to their intellect because they want to clown around, they want to act silly, how do you help them and encourage them in those ways?
Dr. Marks, I'm gonna start off that question for you. For the principals and the counselors, what we definitely need to do, starting in third grade, we definitely need to get students, or not students, but men like us on Zoom calls with your students. I have been working with schools within the Hazelwood School District and the elementary school, just telling them about the fun things that can happen when you go to college. That is number one. Number two is after COVID, I guess you can say, having more of men come to your school and talk about all the good things that college gives. And it's not all about sports. We have some great engineers within our schools. We have great students can become doctors. We have great students become educators. Sports are not the only thing, and I think sports, Dr. Marks, is what students see, because all they can recognize is, I want to go to Duke, I want to go to University of Alabama to play football, and it's really not about that. And it's hard to have that conversation with a young man when they're in 11th grade saying, I want to go to Duke, and you don't even play basketball. Like, okay, I don't know how to explain this to you. So in 3rd grade, this is where definitely it starts. By the time they get freshmen, and Danny, please correct me if I'm wrong, they get kind of hard-headed. So the younger we get them, the better off that this whole conversation will be. And we would love to continue this conversation with younger groups of young men.
I totally think that's important. It's key to put these young men in front of people in the community. You know, if you know people, reach out to them. You know, it's. I thought about this, how powerful this panel is. You know what I mean? In the sense of, you know, I think a lot about being a college counselor and the educational field that I'm in, and how very rarely there are people who look like me, you know, who are Black males. And I remember even in my homeschooling, high schooling, I didn't even have a Black male teacher. You know, I didn't see a Black male education until I got to college. And even then, there were only 2 Black male professors on campus. And, you know, for me, I'll be honest, like, I definitely, you know, had a lot of inspiration from women, and had really great supervisors who were women, who helped me excel my career and believe in myself and what I bring to the table and what have you. But I simply can't take away from the fact of the importance of the Black male voice when it comes to the young, you know, Black men in our community. And being on this panel and hearing from my own Black mentors in college, Black male mentors in college, I realized just how meaningful it was to me, you know, because I hear things from a different perspective, and I'm able to add different things. You know, I see life as like a buffet, right? You take whatever people are saying, you take pieces here and there, right? And I think it's important to really have those students hear that Black male piece for sure. So reach out to the community, reach out, you know, email people, you know, is as uncomfortable as it may be, cold call people, you know, whatever you need to do. Feel free to reach out to me. You know, I have a lot of time on my hands after working on the weekends, you know, so yeah.
Last thing I'll add is checking our own biases for those of us who work with Black male students. Having to consciously continuously undo the work of the things that we were taught about the Black male experience in this country, about the possibilities that exist for Black men in this country. I went to a public high school in the city of St. Louis, had a white woman counselor. I was struggling. She just automatically assumed that because I was struggling, this isn't by no means a discredit to the trade industries, but it was essentially like, you can't do this good, you can't do the normal work, so just go, you can do work with your hands, right? And so not to say that, you know, the trades aren't valued, but literally her bias and her basically racism came out. Instead of saying, let me get you connected with resources to help you navigate this experience, there was an assumption that he just can't do it because he's lazy and he can't try and he can't do all of these things. And so thinking critically about the words that we say to Black men, the words that we say to Black children, because words mean things and they have power. And so making assumptions about where a student lives, where a student comes from, all of those things are things that they absorb like sponges. And so by the time that they get to their junior year of high school, because they've heard so much negative talk about their experiences, they know nothing else, right? And so exposing them early to Black men who are doing things, and also avoiding the Black elitism trope, right? Like, we don't want to overexpose them to Black doctors to where the point, like, they can't kind of see the spectrum, right? So there's a happy medium and a balance that we've got to do. And that's going to take a collective community around them, talking to them, asking them what they want to do. It's okay if they have no idea what I want to do. I'm an adult. I still have no idea what I want to do when I grow up, right? And so you never figure it out. It's just putting one foot in front of the other, but being conscious and mindful of the words we use when we talk to students about the post-secondary opportunities that exist.
And I would actually like to jump in and add that if you have a story of a young man who's currently in college and they're able to serve as a mentor for students who are starting to navigate that process, that's a tremendous resource, because we as professionals and as parents, sometimes, our opinion can only go so far. But when that representation of someone who's closer in age and is going through that process is there, it can serve as that additional advocate. And there are so many programs, and I believe representation is extremely important. And so Mr. Wilson mentioned earlier in the conversation to start getting students on college campuses earlier. There's so many amazing STEM related, fine arts related, writing related camps that middle school students can start engaging in with a variety of colleges. And then there's a lot of diversity related fly-in programs where they are free of charge. Students do have to apply for those, but they are free of charge. And generally those are for juniors and seniors. And so looking at those programs, really taking advantage of those, because those applications can tend to be low. So doing all of that work can really allow for a student to kind of ditch that imposter syndrome and feeling that they're not really belonging within the college setting. So I wanted to add that to these amazing colleagues' responses. And so
really quickly, I just want to say, there's a great NPR podcast called Life Kit that talks about imposter syndrome. It just recently came out. Check it out. They give you like actual steps to deal with it, because imposter syndrome is a real thing, and even adults my age deal with it as well.
Very true. Very true. Thank you for sharing that. And so one question that I did want the panel's advice on is the ACT and the SAT. And so in saying that a lot of colleges are now going test optional, what would be your advice to students who are now, we don't have to take the test anymore, it's good, I'm just going to focus on the applications and submitting my additional academic support documents. How would you advise a student? And I know it can vary from school to school and what institution that you're applying to. But at this point, what advice would you give to, I would think we should gear this towards juniors who are about to navigate this process?
I'll start off, and I'm going to be, I'm taking my SLU hat off. I'm going to be just Ryan Wilson right now. If research the school, if the school is test optional, and I'm going to be honest, don't take the test. Just don't take it. Just don't take it. Don't worry about it. Don't even think about it. And I'm going to tell you the secret to when you get to college your first day, and you'll know the college that you're prepared for, and you'll know the program you're prepared for. It's the thing you have to do is go to tutoring your first day to kind of get yourself acclimated with the university. I am not speaking about WashU right now, okay? I am not speaking about WashU. I'm speaking about in college in general. I'm not talking about SLU. I'm talking about college in general. Don't worry about the test. Don't take it. But the thing is to understand you need to get acclimated with that school your first day. Your counterparts are going to go to tutoring their first day, and they're not going to talk about it. My Black students at my schools that I've been to, they don't go to tutoring unless Dr. Marks yells at them or I yell at them, or it's like it's no other thing they can do to pass this class. And I'm telling you, and I tell them every day, you go to tutoring your first day to get acclimated with the school. So hats off. Now I'm putting my hat back.
My hat also coming off, don't take the test. A lot of my counselors on the high school side of the desk, like Mr. Shields, like Mr. Tejada, are continually calling us on the admission side, asking us like, hey, are y'all gonna make these kids take the test next year? Like, hey, like my kids have been signing up for it. Test gates keep getting canceled. So we hear it from them. That in turn pushes us to push our leadership to continue to say, hey, this ain't right, this ain't fair. Anybody who works in my office knows that every staff meeting, every meeting we have, I'm gonna be the kid that asks the question, hey, any updates for the class of 2026? Any updates that I can share with counselors or students or families? And that gets our leadership in that mindset of like, things ain't gonna be back to normal in September when these juniors are gonna be seniors and they're gonna need to sit for these tests. So really, I would say juniors, create your list. If a school is not test optional, that may not be a school that you wanna keep on your list, because it says a lot about the kind of expectations that school will have for you and the kind of support that you are going to have when you're there. And so that's not me as a WashU representative. That is me as someone who works in the highly selective landscape. Is that, you know, if a school is saying, you know, we're going to require the test next year, that may not be a school that you want to look at. It may be your dream school that says, hey, we're going back to testing. You then at that point are going to have to make that decision on, do I jeopardize my health, my safety just for this school, just for the possibility that I might get a score that may make me admissible to this institution? Alleviate that stress. Just don't take the test. That'll be my advice.
For sure. And whenever parents ask me, because I'm doing junior meetings now, I tell them straight up, if I had a child who was a junior now, I would not want them to take the test, simply because I don't think it's safe, you know. And I'm not trying to spend so much money on test prep or spend so much money on having them travel to another place to be able to take the exam. For me, I always talk about focus more on your classwork, focus more on building relationships with your teachers, focus more on building a relationship with me. You know, focus more on discovering life. You know, don't focus so much on the exam. As far as I'm concerned, from this point forward, you know, I don't really see most colleges ever moving back to requiring exams again. As far as I'm concerned, the exams are dead. And I will also say too, you know, I get very excited when a student tells me, and I had the first student ever tell me, I don't want to take exams. And I said, great, I've been waiting for you my whole career and I fully support you.
Thank you. And so, I just want to add, if you're a student who's a great test taker and you've taken the PSAT and you know that you've scored high, there are certain advantages, but it's time to really use and click, you know, that discernment box. So there's opportunities, and of course, in a safe setting, if your school is offering it, and you know it'll be socially distanced. Generally, majority of schools do offer it the spring semester of your junior year. And so if your school is offering it and you don't have to really travel far, you know it's a safe setting. I would challenge you to really use that discernment, because if you know that you're a good test taker and you've done well on the PSAT or other standardized tests, not having an ACT or SAT score won't hurt your application but including one, if you are a strong test taker, could enhance it. And so that's something that I want to challenge students and families to really think about. But it does include really reflecting on where you stand as essentially as a test taker. All right, and then my last question are just any final thoughts from the panelists? Any last things that you want to share that we haven't covered yet? Any seeds that you want to plant for students who are really starting to think about navigating this process?
I just want to talk about what it means to be a first generation student pretty quickly, right? I'm a first generation student myself. You know, my parents dropped out of high school, and when you're a first generation high school graduate, even a first generation college graduate, it significantly changes the makeup of your family, right? I had people in my family who actively did not want me to go away because they didn't understand the process. They didn't understand that it was affordable to go away because we were low income. So, you know, for me, I had to bite that bullet and really try to, you know, go against the grain with people who were not happy with the choice that I made. But since I made that choice and graduated successfully on time, the expectations for my sister was radically different than what it was for me. And they expected my sister to go away because I did it. So to just understand that, you know, being a first generation student is important and you really lead the way for your younger siblings, for your future children as well. And college really does change your social status. You know, one of the things that was brought up in the chat from Marcus was something about how his daughter wants to start her own technology company and wants seed capital instead of going to college. Yikes, help! But for me, it's like, does your daughter have connections? Because if she doesn't, she needs to go to college to get those connections. You know. To have that alumni network. There are colleges out there that help students, you know, start their own businesses legitly, you know, giving them a little seed money. I know my school where I went, Skidmore does that now. And I'm like, dang, that wasn't around when I was there. I'm so jealous, you know, but there are different opportunities for students out there to, if they are creative, have different ideas, want to start their own business. I think, you know, we think too much about, hey, I could do things on my own, but students need to understand that college can give you the technical skills, the soft skills, the connections that you need to get that thing off the ground, you know. And then one other thing that also Marcus asked about soft and hard skills. As I mentioned earlier before, that relationship building with your teacher, that relationship building with your counselor, that's the thing that's going to be key. Learning how to ask for help. These are what colleges want to see. Are you going to use the resources on our campus? How well do you use the resources in your school that are presented to you? And then one final thing that Marcus also asks, you have really great questions, Marcus, is about why isn't there more of a push to HBCUs? I'll tell you from my perspective, to be honest with you, it has to do with funding. It has to do with financial aid. Like, there's nothing wrong with the Black college experience. I think it's really great, very empowering, and what have you. But time and time again, as a college counselor, from what I've seen, the perspective when students apply to those schools is that the financial aid packages really put a drain on the students and the parents themselves. I've seen financial aid packages where parents have to take out $40,000 in a year so the student could attend that school. And we're talking about families who literally have nothing. So my hope is that if the student wants to go to a HBCU, that they go to one that that they have the grades for, you know, where they could command the scholarship money to be able to go there and apply to scholarships on their own and gather people in the community to rally behind you, because it could be very, very expensive to go to a school like that. And even some of the publics here in Missouri, from what I'm learning as well, it was such a shock to me when I moved here to Missouri, because in New York, you could go to your local public college basically for free, and as a matter of fact, get your whole Pell Grant back, as a refund. And I learned that here in Missouri, it's certainly not like that at all.
Can I touch on a couple of things? I think Marcus, we didn't talk about HBCUs. We should have, Dr. Marks, we should have another conference on HBCUs only, and I can chime in all day long about the great things about HBCUs. But I agree, you got to find that HBCU for you in your budget. Howard, Morehouse, Spelman are the flagships, but I mean Harris Stowe and Lincoln University, Lane, these schools in the Midwest that they are actually affordable, but nobody talks about them. Nobody's giving them thousands of dollars in endowment. Because I get upset about that, because that's another whole story. But the thing is understanding the worth that we all give, because in my eyes, I want my child to go to college that I don't have to pay for 4 years. But I'm going to push my child, if they want to be a doctor, I'm going to push them to the Xavier, because I want to pay full cost for Xavier. I want to pay full cost for Howard, because those 2 years in the HBCU, they have the real fun that a freshman can't really have within the HBCU. So coming from an HBCU experience and knowing all my HBCUs, it's a different mindset. But right now it's about money and how much you want to spend on college. So if you have the money to spend on any college, yes, they should go definitely in any college. But the thing is understanding what's out there for you and for actually your family. And Lincoln University is the best HBCU in Missouri. Thank you.
My colleagues have said a lot. As a first-generation Black male from the city of St. Louis, I didn't see many people who were doing what I do. And that's kind of part of the reason why I stumbled into, like, no one in high school grows up and is like, I want to be an admissions counselor. Like, no one, like, this isn't a job that like people seek out. But I just found, I just kind of discovered that, like, I really am drawn to this work. And so I would say kind of the one thing that that I would probably share is that, like, we've got to return to college being a public good for all of us. Like, I get that, like, you are breaking those generational curses in your family, but we have got to stop putting so much pressure on 16, 17, 18-year-olds to know what they want to do at that age. The 17, 18-year-old me wanted to be an architect, and I went through my college experience right around the time of the Great Recession and talked to an architect who was like, this is probably the worst career you could have right now, because people don't have any money. People aren't coming to me to ask me to build houses for them. My firm is laying off people. So, like, for me, it shifted my thinking into what was a possibility for me. And so I would say nothing is off limits for you as a 16, 17, 18-year-old. Your path will not look like you think it will. And we as support and guidance networks have got to really lean into being just that, instead of putting what we want on students to be. Give them the guidance and give them the understanding that, like, you were going to stumble, you were going to make mistakes. We all do that, but here's how you overcome those, because that's the main difference between us and them, right? Is, like, they know the network that's going to help them pick themselves back up. We got to stop being so prideful and putting so much, like, you do it on your own and you got to work twice and 3 times as hard. Sometimes that working harder is, hey, I need help and I need it, like, now. I don't know what that help looks like. We can put our collective heads together and figure some things out. But I would say just kind of let kids be kids and explore, and stop putting so much pressure on them that they gotta do this for everybody in the family. Like, yeah, Mima and Pookie and them are coming to college with me, but, like, hey, like, I got to go through this on my own. So there's some things that I can bring y'all with me, but there's also some things that you're not going to really understand about my journey, because it's my journey, it's my story. And y'all are kind of in the stands to cheer me on. So yeah.
Thank you. And I guess my final thought before Mr. Marks closes it up for us is there's a lot of conversation right now about the value of a higher education, and is it still worth investing in? And I'll say that college and higher education is still a very essential thing that I recommend that students really look into. Because even though there's alternative routes to go, I know my niece and nephew are really looking and starting to navigate that process right now. Again, if you're looking for that seed money or to be an entrepreneur, rubbing elbows and networking, that's going to give you that base. Those are really going to allow you to develop those networking opportunities and those hard and soft skills that Mr. Tejada mentioned. There's really no alternative at this point, I would say. So even though those conversations are being had, those circumstances where tech giants have gone to college for a year and then dropped out, it's kind of like winning the lotto. So I would say that investing in higher education is still essential in today's society. So it's something that I would recommend that a lot of students really start to think about as early as pre-high school years. So, Mr. Marks, if you would like to close us out.
I really appreciate the panel taking the time out this evening to part with their wisdom about college admission. But before we get finished, I do want to offer an opportunity for you as participants to ask any question. I know through the chat, some people have been asking some things, but let's do about 10 to 15 minutes of question and answer for our panel, because I think it wouldn't be fair if we only spoke to you and you really didn't ask some questions of your own, okay? Anybody want to go? Just unmute your mic. Anyone?
Also, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say people could also feel free to type it in chat too. I know it could be nerve-wracking to talk and be on camera.
Feel free to do that as well. And panelists, if you can put in the chat your information, because you all have have given us a lot of great information, but you didn't give us your information. So put your information in the chat about where you are, where you could be reached, and any resources that you talked about tonight.
Oh, I totally forgot to bring up, and this was one of the things that was rattling around in my mind. College Scorecard is a really great resource, because I meant to also bring that up with Net Price Calculator. And one of the amazing things about College Scorecard is that it also tells you about debt load, especially now, and this is new this year, Parent Plus loan averages for different schools. So you can get an idea of that even beforehand. So remember, Net Price Calculator and collegescorecard.gov.
Good.
And actually, there's a resource that I want to shout out called Campus Reel. And so Campus Reel is a student-driven virtual college tour. And so in the era of the pandemic, when a lot of schools are not necessarily opening their doors for visitors, I think that Campus Reel is a really awesome alternative. So in addition to looking at the virtual 360 college tour on the school's website, I think that Campus Reel gives a little bit of perspective on the current student experience on campus. And so I think they have about over 2,000 students or schools that are represented. And so you're able to see how that environment is, within a normal year. So just a shout out to Campus Reel.
We didn't touch on this a lot, but there are a lot of secrets within financial aid.
Yeah.
It's tons of secrets, and I don't think we have time for all of them. But I know if you have questions about financial aid, please let us know. I did put in the chat app called Schooly that will help you find scholarships. Do not look up FastWeb. That is the worst thing since the devil. So don't touch FastWeb. Please look up Schooly and these other apps that you can look up scholarships.
Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. I did put in the chat a couple of things that I wanted you all to note. On Saturday, the St. Louis Regional Consortium is having our Black Male of Excellence Leadership Conference, which will be virtual. St. Louis University is hosting, but we have a host of different programs and sessions that will be talking specifically as it relates to the Black male and their identity. We're looking for people to participate in any way they can. It's for juniors and seniors in high school. We look at sophomores and juniors, sophomores and freshmen if they're wanting to be a part of it, as well as our collegiate students. It is free this year, so I've shared with you all the website for you to join into that. Then I also shared with you the evaluation. Please give us feedback about this particular program and what other programs you would like for us to do. 100 Black Men is a great organization in which we are there for the community. And in any way that we can possibly do that, we are going to show up and show out. And so in collaboration with the St. Louis Regional Consortium, we put on this program, but we're open to doing more. Please fill out that evaluation. We would love to hear your feedback. Well, there's nothing else, you all. Thank you all for coming out for this panel tonight. It was great participation. We had about 50 people here today, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. All right, enjoy your evening.
Thank you very much. Peace. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Everyone.
Thank you all.
Yeah.